Hello and welcome back. My name is Nicole and I am a reader and a writer, and today I'm going to be talking about books that I have read in 2024. And unfortunately, I don't have the physical copies of them. I did read Kingdom of Ash and I reviewed that, did a reading vlog and everything, so you can go check that out. But other than that, the other two books I read on Kindle. So the first book that I read this year, and actually this was the first one I read this year. So Kingdom of Ash and Tower of Dawn and Kingdom of Ash are the two books that I read in the Throne of Glass series, and I discussed the entire series in that Kingdom of Ash reading vlog, the Kingdom of Ash reading vlog. And then I read the favorites. I will put a picture thing of the book there. Anyway, I read that on Kindle. I usually decided to read that one with my significant other because I heard about it listening to the Shit No One Talks About Writing podcast, and they raved about this book. I don't remember the details. I would have to go back and listen to the episode, but they raved about the book. And there was a lot of talk of law and ethics, and there was questions. So I was like, this would be a good one for us to read together, because as we're reading it, we can talk about what we think is happening. Which, I mean, I will tell you, there was a lot of conversation about what was happening in the book. We did talk about it. It took a lot of pushing to get him to read it, but he did read it. Actually, I'm not sure if he finished it, to be fair. No, I think he did, because we did talk about how it ended. And a star rating, I would give the book 2.5, 3. I don't know. It feels generous, but also feels very unfair. 2.5 to 3. The writing in and of itself, I had moments where I was like, wow, this writing is really good. So, okay, the writing was good. The structure of the book and the development of the main character are what I feel like was lacking. Like, up until 3/4 of the way, it was well designed. I think that the story, the plot, the characters, everything was moving along pretty well. And then at the 3/4 mark, the main character did something that didn't quite make sense. And then everything after that just kind of like fell to pieces. And I was like, this is terrible. And then the main character's motives, when that came out, it was like, this seems like a lot for what happened. And there are a lot of questions that we can't fully answer by the end of the book, because one of the other characters is not, like, you can't ask them the questions that you need to ask them. I'm trying to do this without giving things away. But yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't really recommend reading it to anybody. I don't think it would be necessary. I don't think that you learn anything. I'm not sure it would call it entertaining. The writing was good. I'm curious if I were to read another Rosemary Hennigan book, how I would feel, because like I said, I liked her writing, but I just felt like it was structurally good until the 3/4 mark, character good until the 3/4 mark. So it was like that, like, turning point, you know, the dark moment in the story structure. Everything after that just fell apart, and I was very disappointed. I feel like it could have ended differently. It could have gone a different way and would have significantly increased my rating of the book. Hi, editing me here. I realized as I was talking about the favorites, I didn't actually explain anything about what the book's about, which is kind of hard to do given that the nature of the book. But essentially, it is a girl who is in college. I think she's working on her master's degree. She lives in Ireland, and she ends up traveling to Pennsylvania to go to a different university for one specific professor who is like very well renowned, but he had been in Ireland and had taught her sister. And you kind of get that there was something between the professor and her sister. And then she's kind of going to Pennsylvania to enact some kind of revenge for some reason that you don't know until you read the book. So that's the best I can tell you without giving everything away. So yeah, that's kind of what the story's about. That's the favorites. Moving on to the next book that I read. This one also very controversial on opinion, A Love Letter to Whiskey. A Love Letter to Whiskey. Apparently this, okay, I read the 5th anniversary edition. So there is the first edition, which only has one character's perspective, I believe. And then the 5th anniversary edition, she added the second main character's point of view into the book. That's where it gets controversial. So a lot of people, I've been reading online, a lot of people absolutely rave about the addition of the point of view. And they say it makes a huge, huge difference in the story, which I can see how if you only had B's perspective and that was it and nothing more, if it really ended where it ended in the 5th anniversary edition before his POV, like it would have been very upsetting to read. Without being able to skip to his POV. But here's where I'm upset, is it's not alternating POV. It is the first X amount of chapters, her point of view. The book ends. Like the story wraps up. And then you get his POV from the beginning. And I didn't read all of his point of view because I read the first 2 chapters. Excuse me. Are you whining? Excuse me. What's going on, Missy? What's happening? What's wrong? What? I read the first 2 chapters of his point of view, and the very first 2 chapters were basically the same as her point of view. And I was hoping when we got his point of view, we would get a little bit more like interiority of like what's going on. Like there is a scene where he picks her up and he has like this whole like emotional breakdown because he's going to be going to college and he's upset about it or freaking out or something. And when we read it from her point of view, it was like he picks me up, he's quiet and brooding for a while, and then I turn on the music and tell a joke. And then from his perspective, it's I'm upset, I'm feeling upset, I'm going to go pick her up. We drive, we're quiet for a while, and then she tells me a joke. It's like, what are you upset about? What's going on in your head? Like, I wanted more of that. And from what I've heard from other people, and I may someday go back and read all of his chapters after I've had some distance, but what I've heard is that his pain, you know, that he goes through over what the 2 of them, the back and forth that they go through, like really stands out in his chapters. So I skipped ahead to like chapter 10 of his chapters because that's where the gap is. So when her book ends, there's like a point where something happens and then it goes to epilogue, and it kind of skips like months at a time. And there is some stuff in there that I would have liked to have seen happen. And so chapter 10 and on from his perspective fills in that gap. So that I enjoyed reading, and I'm glad I got to see that. I just really, really wish that it was alternating POV and that we could see his perspective from as things are happening, as we're reading, things are happening for the first time, rather than we read all of it and then we go back in time and read his perspective. That's what really killed me with the book. I loved the book. I loved the back and forth. I loved how angry I got with the characters. I loved how excited I got with the characters. I loved experiencing all of it with the characters, but I was just very, very unhappy with the structure. So originally I was going to give this book 4.5 stars, but because it structurally wasn't set up with alternating POV as the book went on and instead just dumped his chapters at the end, I gave the book 3 stars. It dropped it 1.5 stars just purely because of that. So that's my review. Those are the books that I've read. So Kingdom of Ash, Tower of Dawn, I read in January, February, spanning the 2 months. And then The Favorites and The Love Letter to Whiskey I read in February, and The Favorites I read in January. So those are the books that I've read in 2024. I will be uploading a TBR for March coming up here soon in this week. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you some insight as to some books you might want to pick up or not pick up and prioritize other ones. And I look forward to speaking with you next time.